Mi nombre es Roberto J. Marín.
My name is Roberto J. Marin. I was a professor at the University of Antioquia for about 6 or 7 years in Medellin, Colombia. I have published more than 20 scientific articles in scientific journals around the world. I currently live in Ireland with my wife, a wonderful woman, and I also work here as a researcher. Great miracles have occurred in my life, and I am going to share some of my experiences. I'm going to start with the words of Jesus in Luke 12:15. Take heed and beware of covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses. Sometimes we measure or want to measure life with respect to what we have, and we fail if we do so. When I was very young, I began my university career in civil engineering at the University of Antioquia. On one of the vacations, I had the opportunity to work. This was by choice, and with the help of an aunt, I started to work as a construction helper. It was a very difficult job, maybe the first salary I received in my life. I remember that God touched my heart with a message I heard in a Seventh-day Adventist church. It made me reflect, and I decided to be faithful to God, giving Him tithes. But I also proposed trusting in His promises to give offerings to Him. At that moment, I decided that it was going to be 40% of what I received. That is, I was going to give God 50% of all my income. You might think it's not that significant at that point in my life. I didn't have a family to support, I didn't have excessively large responsibilities, but this completely impacted my life. I think it has a lot to do with fidelity. Every time we give to God, we can consciously reaffirm whether we choose Him, whether we are going to serve Him or not. And this is what I have experienced in the moment of returning to God, what He indicated to us. But in addition to giving free will offerings, through a decision that requires action, we are choosing Him as our Lord. The systematic offerings and tithes given to God make me reflect on how God is really the center of my life. If really all aspects of my life, not only economically, but what my weaknesses may be, those that have been since cherished or that have dominated me, how can they continue in my life but also continue with a coherent life? Being a professor at the University of Antioquia, studying my doctorate at the same university, it was also a very beautiful decision with my now wife, Paola, that we were going to get married. Back then, financially, I remember that a few months before my wedding, I didn't have the money, not even to pay for the tuition of my PhD, and it was a very large sum for me. My monthly income was far from being comparable to not only what I had to pay for my last semester of PhD, but also all the high expenses that come with a wedding, a honeymoon, but most importantly, I would say, sustaining a new family. But with a lot of prayer and trust in God, we continued to move forward with what we proposed, and God responded with great miracles. I had continued all those years, giving God 50% of my income, 10% as tithes to God, 20% as an offering to my church, and another 20% as an offering that I, myself, administered in different missionary projects. And this also allowed me to carry out a large number of missionary projects. Just a few months before my wedding, God provided in countless ways. One of them, a student who won a research prize, who voluntarily, without knowing my situation at the moment, decided to give me half of her prize, the equivalent to approximately 3 or 4 times my monthly income. Also, the director of my doctorate and director of the research group in which I was part gave me what was equivalent of 1.3 times my monthly income. It was from the research group for my tuition. He had actually promised me half of that the previous semester, but God had also performed a miracle, and due to the pandemic, I did not have to pay anything for my tuition 6 months ago. That amount that my director had promised me was accumulated, and the following semester he gave it to me. I also received about 2.4 times my monthly income as a scholarship received from a private institution. In many other ways God provided, I even got a new job, but I couldn't even use that money for the wedding or the honeymoon. The first payment was made to me many months after it was due. In fact, it was the same day when we were going with my wife on our honeymoon. We had a wonderful honeymoon with my wife, 10 days between Cancun, Playa del Carmen, and very beautiful places. I didn't really count all the ways God provided, including other surprising ways with other sums of money. The best thing is that even from everything I received in money, God also allowed me to give Him 50%. We had a spectacular wedding, a wonderful honeymoon. Thank God I finished my doctorate and I had enough money to do missionary work. I really consider that God's purpose in our lives is much bigger than we usually think. Let us not be proud and not place our trust in money. Money cannot be trusted. We should place our trust in God as He provides all we need for our happiness.